Workers around the country are ringing in a new year with a new raise. Workers will see a bigger paycheck this year in 13 states, with New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and Rhode Island raising the state minimum wage. Several other states, including Arizona, Colorado, and Florida, are increasing the cost of living wage for workers. California will be increasing its state minimum wage to $9 halfway through the year, and Washington, D.C. and parts of Maryland will also see minimum wage increases in 2014. Now, 21 states require employers to pay workers above the federal minimum wage, which is still $7.25 an hour. President Obama and Democrats are hoping to increase that federal minimum wage sometime this year to $9 or $10 an hour, but they're facing a lot of opposition from the right. And that opposition is perhaps best encapsulated in a recent op-ed by former Congressman Ron Paul, who argued raising the minimum wage increases the price of labor, thus decreasing the demand for labor. So an increased minimum wage will lead to hiring freezes and layoffs. Unskilled and inexperienced workers are the ones most often deprived of employment opportunities by increases in the minimum wage. Joining me now to further make this claim is Brian Doherty. He's the senior editor at Reason. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So for today's minimum wage to have the same purchasing power that it had in the 1960s, it would have to be increased to $10 an hour. What effect would such an increase have on the economy?
Well, I mean, there's no way to quantify it, but we do know this. The people who tend to earn the minimum wage tend to be the lowest skilled among us, and in many cases, the youngest among us. It is worth remembering that more than half of the people earning the minimum wage in America are people between the ages of 16 and 24, generally part-time workers. The minimum wage is not really an issue for breadwinners or people trying to earn an entire family's income. So you look at the people who are most affected by it, the 16 to 24-year-olds. These are people who need, most of all, to get a foothold in the job market. One of the best ways to increase your ability to earn more money in any job market is having had your foot in the door. And if we lock out people, which we inevitably will, because no employer is going to hire an employee who he is going to lose money on. So if your value to your employer is going to end up being less than whatever the minimum wage is, you're not going to get hired, and this can have really bad effects on your entire life. And again, it is worth remembering, we're not talking about family breadwinners in those cases. We're talking about teenagers. And the data does show that states that already have a higher minimum wage than the federal average do tend to have higher teen unemployment, and that's where the real action is at the minimum.
Well, I'm really wondering, though, if these laws of supply and demand necessarily apply to the labor market, like Ron Paul was suggesting and like you're suggesting. There have been several studies done on this issue, and virtually every single one has shown no increase in unemployment when the minimum wage is increased. A 2000 study compared fast food employment in neighboring New Jersey and Pennsylvania after New Jersey raised their minimum wage. Employment wasn't affected. Another study in 2010 from UNC, University of California, UMass, looked at every single pair of neighboring counties in the U.S. with different minimum wages and found no discernible impacts on unemployment. So why doesn't the science seem to back up these spoken warnings about raising the minimum wage?
First of all, the Card-Kruger study you're talking about, that was mostly based on telephone surveys. And if you actually look at payroll data rather than just telephone surveys, that falls apart. But there's a reason in science that we come up with regularities and laws, because in anything regarding economics, there are so many things that go into affecting any given choice anyone makes that there is no way for empirical studies that look at just one thing to actually know what is the cause of it. There are a million things that could affect what makes a fast food restaurant or any other restaurant choose to make any given hiring decision. So we actually look for laws and regularities that go beyond just looking at what you see in front of us. This is what science is all about. And it is economics in its entirety becomes utterly meaningless chaos if we do not understand that, other things being equal, if you charge more for something, people are going to demand a lower quantity of it. Basically, an economist who is trying to look at the world and claim that the law of demand does not exist is basically saying that economics as a science is worthless. And we have plenty of reasons to know in almost every other facet of the world that when the price of something is increased, demand for it is less. So you should look at these supposed empirical studies, which are always being done for a political purpose.
Gotcha.
They're always being done to support the notion that
I got you.
There's one place in the world where reality, the laws of economics fall apart, and you should look at that really skeptically.
Okay, so The Economist in 2012, it's not exactly a bastion of liberal thought, said that evidence is mounting that moderate minimum wages can do more good than harm. And I'm wondering if we're neglecting the stimulative effect of an increase in the minimum wage. Low-wage workers basically spend all of their income, meaning if they had more income through a minimum wage increase, they would spend that too. And spending generates economic activity. The Economic Policy Institute estimates that a minimum wage increase to $10 would create $32 billion in new economic activity. And of course, that's all done without adding a single dime to the deficit, which I'm sure Reason hates. So why isn't this a good idea?
Because it does it at the cost of the lowest skilled, youngest workers. Yeah, absolutely. If you raise the minimum wage, say, from 7 to 10, you're going to attract some people, generally not the lowest skilled people, who might go, I don't feel like flipping burgers for $7. White kid needs a job during summer vacation for college. Maybe I'm willing to do it for 10. Absolutely, you can attract people into the market that way, but you're still harming the lowest wage workers. And if all you're looking at is the notion that, we want to help some people, we want the people who already have these jobs to have more money for them to spend, and that's all you care about, go ahead. But if you care at all about getting people at the bottom of the job ladder working up, if you care at all about not encouraging companies to automate in ways that are going to cut low-wage labor for people down the line in ways that these studies are not going to show, then go ahead. But again, it's extremely silly to claim that the law that's the entire basis of economics suddenly stops working in this one area where it's politically convenient for us to want to put more money in certain people's pockets.
We're running out of time. I want to get one more question in here. Aside from the economics here, the reality is that there are millions of Americans who are working full-time jobs and making a minimum wage that they can't get by on, and they're having to rely on federal benefits to make ends meet. What should we be doing about these people in the short term, in the immediate term, to address this rather serious problem with our economy?
We need jobs. We need more people to have more jobs, and the way you get economic growth is not through government management, not through government ordering people around. It's to allow businesses to grow. It's allow them to hire who they want at the price they want to hire. It is not the job of any given business who hires minimum wage workers to make up federal policy about what amount of money people think anyone should have. This whole line of thinking, I mean, my answer to your question is we shouldn't be doing anything about it except allowing the forces of economic growth to work, and you don't do that by
wait for the free market to work. Brian Doherty, senior editor at Reason, thanks for coming on.
Sure.